And we are live, guys. How's it going? Welcome to the Introduction to Web Development Workshop 3, where we will be completing Netflix landing page. I've got Gopika, Jeremy, and Pauline from all the DSCs. And let me just reduce the volume of this music. How's everyone doing? Just gonna check how going. Welcome to the, sorry about that. I was just listening to myself. Got YouTube playing. Okay, cool. So I'm just gonna quickly share my screen. All right. Cool. So welcome to Workshop 3, and today we'll be completing the Netflix landing page. Akil won't be joining us, unfortunately. He's not feeling really well, so I'll be taking you over through this workshop. So basic things, our agenda was from previously, workshop 2, we had to complete the Netflix landing page, but we did not complete the Netflix landing page. So I'm just going to quickly go over what things we did last week, a few days ago, actually. So we started off with HTML, went into CSS basics, then we jumped into how do we connect CSS with HTML, and there were various ways. We stuck to external CSS, where we created a new style sheet and connected it to our HTML page using the link tag in HTML, and then added a fab icon to our Netflix page, went through selectors on how do we select the HTML tag and add some styling to it, and then went over CSS comments and obviously the div element, which Akil went over, and he managed to create the initial structure of the Netflix landing page. So I'll go over that in a bit. Then we also went through the form element. So Netflix has a sign up form, and that's why the HTML form element was required. So we went over the form element, as well as the input element. Input element is basically the input box. There are various types of inputs like text, radio, checkboxes. So all these are input types. And obviously then the button element, which allows us to create a button in the HTML page. And yeah, and then we jumped further into like the various CSS properties. I went over CSS fonts, the box model of CSS, and went over box sizing, which basically adds the padding and the border inside the width of the div element. So that's what box sizing does. And we then went through backgrounds, and then went over Flexbox. This is where I think we ended off. We created the layout of the various div elements. This is basic. Flexbox is basically a layout module, and I went through the various Flexbox properties like flex direction, justify content, and align items. I think this is the most important part in CSS that is required to actually style the HTML page, create a proper layout to the HTML page. And yeah, cool, guys. So let me just go back to where we stopped last week. Can you see my screen? Is it moving? Sorry about that. I think I just shared one screen. Someone from the DSC, could you just confirm my screen's viewing properly? Gopika?
Yep, just getting it up.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, cool. So what we are actually building is this Netflix landing page. Last week we managed to, a few days ago, we managed to create the header of it, the banner actually. We added some text to it. We finished the header part, the nav bar. Then we ended off by creating that form, the input box and the get started button. And that's where we stopped last week. So just going back to our code, so we had this index.html page, which contains all the code. And then we had the styles of CSS file that contain all the CSS code inside it. So I'm just gonna drop a link, the GitHub link on. I don't think I have the GitHub link open. Gopika, do you have the GitHub link open with you?
Not at the moment, sorry. I'll get it up.
Okay, cool. Do you mind, once you get it, could you just drop it in the YouTube chat? Yeah, cool, thanks.
Yeah.
Cool. So
It's
let's
the
continue.
same as last session, right?
Yeah, it's the same link as last session. I've pushed all my code to GitHub, which means everyone will be able to access this code up to today, and they'll be able to download this HTML page, basically. So I'll probably give it like 30 seconds for everyone to just make sure they're ready. So whoever wants to code along, we can code along, we can get started. We'll actually be completing this form over here, the get started form, and then we'll jump into the second session, second part of Netflix, which is the info part. So this is the info part. We'll dive deeper into how this video appeared, and then we'll try finish off the footer of Netflix. We won't go over frequently asked questions, and the second part, which is quite similar to the first part, due to time.
I posted a link into the chat now, so they should access it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Right. So I'm gonna open up my index.html page. I'm just gonna close this for more work area. And as you can see, the structure was we created the banner wrap, we then created the navbar inside it and the banner container. Going back to our HTML page, the first part is the entire div is actually the banner wrap that contains that background. And then we have the nav bar, which basically contains the Netflix logo and the sign in button. We completed that in the previous workshop. And then we started off doing the banner container, which contains the text, the H1, H2, H3 text, and contains this form. So we stopped on styling the form over here. So now going to our CSS on how we started off on styling the form was we've got the form tag over here, and the form tag contains an input tag and a button element. So input element and a button element. And what we did was to the form itself, we removed the border from it. That's because a normal form has a default styling. We made it display flex so that we can align it properly. And then we made sure it's justified content center align, item center, so that we can center align it. So the next thing is we need to give it a width of whatever Netflix has specified. So I'm just going to right click on the input of Netflix and see what exactly the width is. So I'm just gonna check the elements, maybe go to computer, if I can figure out what the width is. Maybe I can just use a screenshot tool. I'm using a Mac OS, so it allows me to use that screenshot tool and give me the number of pixels. And that's approximately about 450 pixels. Yeah, so what I'm gonna do is in the banner wrap, and input will basically have a width of 500 pixels. Actually 450, we've got 450, right? Let's see what happens. And that increases the size of the input box. Then let's see what the size of the button is. The button is about 257 pixels, approximately. So inside banner wrap, Inside banner wrap, we're gonna go to the button element and style that, give a width of 257 pixels. That seems quite big, but let's see. Okay, that seems a bit too big, but we'll see how to center align all of that. We'll probably reduce the size, but let's get the height and width, all other styling in place. Cool. Now, the next thing is to make sure it has the height of what this form has. So I'm just going to use the screenshot tool again and check the height of this. That's about 70 pixels approximately. So I'm going to give the height to the form because I want the height of the form to be 70 pixels. Awesome. Now let's see what changes. Nothing changes. We did give a height of 70 pixels, but nothing changes, which means the input and the button itself need to fill the height of the parent component. The parent component is formed, so input needs to fill that. So height should be 100%. That means it needs to fill 70 pixels, the height of the form. Let's save that and check, and perfect. That changes the height to 70 pixels. I'm going to do the same thing for the button. So height of 100%. Guys, if you have any questions, please drop them in the YouTube chat, and I'll be answering them on the go. Cool, I've got that button sorted. Doesn't look like what Netflix has. So let's style it a bit, yeah? So starting with the input, let's change the font size of it first. The font size seems quite similar, but it's not the same. So I'm just going to change the font size. It's about, let's see what the font size is here. That's about 16 pixels. That's 1 REM. REM basically takes the size of the parent, the main font size, which is 16 pixels of the entire body, and uses that, and basically it refers to that. So this is basically 1 REM, or we can keep it at 16 pixels, doesn't matter. And on click, it gives that highlight. Maybe we can fix that later. But for now, let me add some padding as well, because it has some padding. And for padding, I can give about 10 pixels. So I'm just testing that. Padding left. Let's be padding. 10 pixels. Okay, great. I think 70 pixels height seems a bit quite big, eh? So I might reduce that. Maybe let me just close this. Yeah, 70 pixels is a bit too big. So I'm just going to test this here. And it's actually 60 pixels, not 70 pixels. So I'm going to change that to 60. Yeah, much like it. Cool. So we've got that input box sorted. Now, next thing is we need to sort out this button here. Also, it has some sort of, I don't know, space in between. We need to remove that border. So let's focus on the button now. Actually, the input might also have a border. So I'm just going to give a border none. And what Netflix does on resizing is, you see the button overflows. So what we can do is actually use flexbox, actually flex wrap to be wrapped around. I'm just going to go to the CSS properties. So we're going to use flex wrap, and I'm going to say wrap. This will allow me to push the button to the next line. And I think I mentioned that in the previous workshop as well. So in the form, what I'm going to do is it's already a flex box. So I'll change the flex wrap to be wrap. And let's see if that works in our Netflix. So as I bring it down, and there it goes to the next line. Perfect. That is perfect. Right. So we were actually focusing on the button. The first thing is to ensure that the color is red. What I'm going to do is, so the hover color is a bit different to the normal color. So the normal color seems a bit darker and then becomes a bit lighter on hover. So we can use a pseudo selector to fix that. So I'll come to that in a bit, but let's just get the normal red first. So I'm just going to use an inspector again. Right click inspect, go to the computer, actually in the styles itself, I'm just gonna type color. And that's the cool thing about Google Chrome. It gives you so many different tools like this, and so helpful. So I'm going to use the color picker. So the moment I type color and select any color, you can click on that color and a color picker will appear. So now I can go on any part on the web page and pick the color. So I'm going to go to get started, pick that color, and I'm going to use that as my background for the button. So background color to be whatever that red is. Cool. So banner wrap button. I see this also changed. Oh, never mind. That's my mistake. Cool. So the button changes to red. That's perfect. But the button also has some sort of border. So I'm going to give a border none to it. And the font color is actually white. So I'm going to change that to white. And then font size is definitely not 16 pixels. So I'm going to check what this font size is. Okay, so Netflix also has that hover thing on top, the border around it when I click on it. So I'm just going to check the font size. The font size, let's see, let's inspect that. So I right click on the button, I click on inspect, and they're actually using a span. There's a padding of about 1.5 rem. I could perhaps just copy that. We'll need that. So the button actually has some padding. Go to computed and try figure out what the font size. Font size is 26 pixels. So I'm going to keep this as 26 pixels. Cool. Let's see. Okay, great. This looks great, but seems a bit more bold than what Netflix is using. So I'm just going to drop the font weight of it to be around 300. And let's see if that helps. Much like it, eh? Awesome. Now, the next thing is we need to ensure that there's that space. So let's fix that space now. I'm approximating that to be about 10 pixels. I can give it to the form directly. So margin top to be 10 pixels. Let's see if that works. A bit too less, eh? It's a bit more than that. Maybe if we can figure that out from Netflix. So Netflix has a padding. That's a padding. So I'm gonna right click on the form. Oh, I see. So the H3 actually has a padding of 20 pixels bottom. So we can do that. So the H3 is basically inside getting started. I wonder why we have this class. I think this was a test class, the H3 font small font color. This is when we were explaining the multiple classes. So I'm just going to remove that. It's unnecessary. So H3 actually has some sort of padding bottom. So I'm going to give that a padding. Let's see what the padding bottom is. It's about 20 pixels. Left and right is about 47 pixels, which seems a bit too much, but yeah, let's just give it that. So top 0, left 47 pixels, bottom 20 pixels, and left 47 pixels again. So I don't think we've come across this syntax before. So what's happening here is, so padding has different type of syntax. You can either just keep it as one value, which means padding all around the element, or if you have two values, that's basically the first value means it's the top and bottom, second value is left and right. And then when you have four values, the first value is the top, second value is the right, the third value is the bottom, and the fourth value is the left. So that should position our form perfectly on our Netflix landing page. Awesome, that is looking so good. Looks exactly like Netflix. Obviously, Netflix has that overlay, and when that overlay appears, it will look more like Netflix. I see we have a bit more padding here. I think that's because I think we added a margin to the form, the margin top. That needs to be removed. That's much like it. And then there's more space between watch anywhere and ready to watch. So it's gonna fix that. Watch anywhere, that's an H2. So H2 has a bottom margin of 155 pixels. I would probably give about 10 pixels top to H3 and see how that goes. And that is perfect. That's exactly what we're looking for. Awesome. Another thing I noticed is the background image is a bit different to what Netflix is using. Netflix keeps changing their image, the background image, almost every single day, so we can't track that. Cool. So that is, so basically we're 90% done with the banner wrap of the Netflix landing page. Are there any questions? Gopika, do you want to just help me out with?
Yeah, there's no questions, but someone did ask if you can leave the half the screen as the site and half the screen as VS Code, just so that they can always see the code.
Oh, so the code. So you want me to keep the browser open on half of the screen and code on
Yeah.
half of the screen? Oh, so that's going to mess up with our sizing of Netflix. So it's going to reduce the sizing. That becomes a mobile size. So that might mess around with our code, but let me try. Let me try. I think that would be helpful as well. Let's see. Cool.
Someone also mentioned that their button is not working.
This button. Is it the get started button?
He said it's not red and not of the right width. So maybe you could go that bit just slightly.
Yeah, I don't think this resizing thing is working out. Yeah, because I need to get my CSS code and HTML code open at the same time. But anyways, just going back to our button. So what I did to the button is I gave it a width of 257 pixels and a height of 100%. 100% because I wanted to fill the form of height 60 pixels, right? Form is the parent element. And then I gave it a background color of whatever this background color is, it's red. And then gave it a border none, color white to make sure the text is white, and change the font size and give it some padding and font weight. Maybe where the error could be is your button element. Your button element it's literally just button, and then you've got text inside that.
He says it doesn't get started.
It doesn't get started. Maybe could you elaborate more on that error?
Just a second.
He's saying he's just specifying it is the get started button that he's having an issue with. That's all. Okay. It might be helpful to go over the code just in the HTML in case there's anything he might be missing.
Yeah, I'm just going to go through that as well. So in the HTML code, we've got the form. So make sure the button is inside the form and right next to the input tag, input element. So that's literally what the button element is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to git push this so that you can see the latest code on Git and try comparing where that error might be coming from. So banner wrap 90% done. Cool. All right. So the code will now be available on GitHub, and if you haven't caught up with what I've done so far, you can download the code and continue to the next section. If you're getting any errors, try downloading the code and try to figure out where the error could be coming from. Maybe you're just missing, I don't know, a small dots period on the class, it's not defined properly, or your HTML tag isn't defined properly. The error should be somewhere around here because there's nothing more that I've done to the button elements. Yeah. Cool. Gopika, so can I jump to the next section if there are no questions?
There are no more questions.
Okay, perfect. Cool. Now the next part is actually the info container. And this is where we'll be going through, let me go to the correct slide. We'll be going through the elements, the video elements and the position property. So HTML actually has a video element that allows us to show videos on a web page. Netflix has used that video element. So if I right click on the Netflix page on the video and inspect that, you will see that there is a video element in here. Let me see. I hope they haven't changed it. I'm assuming, yeah. So it is a video element. So my highlighted element is actually a video element. So what I'm going to do later is I'm just going to copy paste this so that we can literally use the same video in our Netflix landing page. So that's what the video element helps us do. Now, the next important concepts that I want you to know before we start building the next part of the Netflix landing page is the position property. So the position property basically allows us to position an element correctly on the page. So it adds on to the layout. Layout will basically give it a structure, and then position will allow us to position a specific element on the web page. So so there are actually different types of position elements. There's absolute, there's fixed, and there's also static. So what positions, let me just go back there, yeah. So what the position static does is it basically allows us, keeps that element on the default position where we've placed in the HTML page. That's why all elements have the default position static. It allows us to give it a specific element flow. So what I mean by that is if I place a div and I place another div, the next div will go to the next line or go right next to it. It will never overlap or mix around with another div. So all elements have a position static. But then sometimes you want one element on top of another, or you want to position one element relative to another element. And that's where the position relative and position absolute comes in. It allows us to control that element flow, where you can place one div on the web page, and then we can place another div, and the other div will basically have the height and width or position relative to the first div. So going over position relative.
Sorry to interrupt. Someone had a question.
Yeah.
They asked, can the styles differ between browsers? Because they said they're on Fedora, and the Firefox, it's not showing the same font and font weights. Oh, So basically, he's asking if the styles differ depending on the browsers.
Okay, so styles do not differ depending on the browsers unless they have mentioned that Firefox uses this. You can literally specify that Chrome uses this styling or Firefox uses this styling. It really depends on the company itself, the developers, what they have coded. If I want, I can, I'm not quite sure, I've never done this before, but you can specify styling for just Google Chrome and Mozilla Firefox, because yeah, sometimes you want, sometimes some elements, some properties, CSS properties are not valid in a specific browser. And it usually happens in Internet Explorer. It's quite old. So some things like animation, CSS animation doesn't appear on Internet Explorer. So you need to code it in a different way. So you can make a different code for a different browser, but usually it does not happen like that. What might be the difference is your screen size. So I'm using a 15.6-inch screen, and the moment you resize your screen, they are probably changing the font size, maybe not the font type. It's usually the same. It's usually the height and weight of each and every element and font size that is changed. So if you notice, let me go back to the main page. So when I give it a full screen, notice the font size. Now I'm going to reduce the font. I'm going to reduce the browser size. And did you notice that small jump? They've basically added something called a media query that allows us to change the font size for different screen or add different styling for different screens. Cool. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna go to my next. So I was going over CSS position. So we were talking about position relative, and this basically allows us to position elements relative to its original position in the element flow. So if the original position is basically the position of the entire web page, and then we have position absolute. So what position absolute does is it removes the normal static or relative position property from an element, and then it positions it relative to the first ancestor that is not static. And what I mean by that is, let's go back to our code. Yeah, so I'm just on my code. I'm just going to open one of these divs. So if banner container is relative, and I make get started relative as well, and then I make the form element absolute, the form element will be positioned according relative to get started. And that's what I mean by the first ancestor that is not static in the flow. So get started is not static, it's actually relative. So the form, which is absolute, will be relative to get started. So I'm going to give you an example now. So I'm going to build this, the second part of it, which is the info container. So let's actually give it a structure first in our HTML. So I'm just going to remove all this. Do we need this? Let me check. Yes, we actually do need it. So I'm going to create a structure, a div structure. I don't need the CSS part right now, so I'm just going to keep the HTML part. So the second part of it has the main container. I'm going to call it the info container. So dot info container, that will create a div with a class info container. And then we have this text on the left and then the video on the right. So the text on the left, I'm just going to call it .info. I'm going to give it a class info. And inside the info container, I have h1 that says enjoy your TV. I'm just going to copy paste that text. And then an h2 tag for the rest of the text. And there is some BR after a line break after the Xbox comma. So I'm just gonna go back there, Xbox comma, I'm gonna give it a line break, and as well as after and. There's a line break after and. Awesome. I'm just gonna remove this code here, we don't need that. That's our info container, the first part of it. And then we have the second part, which is the TV. So I'm just going to call this a TV container, and the TV container actually contains this video. And then if you notice, the border of it is actually an image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect this. So right click inspect, and let's see. So this is the second part of the info container. So I'm just going to call this a TV container, the .tv container. And inside the TV container, I have that image. So let's see where that image is. So this is actually the video, that's the image. So I'm going to copy this image, copy elements, just going to paste it here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place it inside a div so it doesn't overflow anyway. So I'm going to call it .tv image. And then the video itself. So I'm going to call it .video or TV video. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the video element and paste it inside that. Perfect. Cool. Let's see, it's probably horrible. It's looking horrible right now. So we've got that image, perfect. We have that video that appeared. So if you notice, we used that video element and the video appeared. The video element has a link to it. That's the link to the assets. I'm just going to remove the default classes. And perfect. Now we need it to look something like this. You notice it has some sort of background, so let's start styling it in CSS. Just gonna open CSS, and I'm gonna style the info container. Let me try keeping it side by side. That helps more. Let's see if that, okay, that resizes what we actually building. Yeah, it doesn't help. Thought I'd try that. So I'm just gonna split left. Cool. So we were actually styling the info container. So .info container. And the info container, first thing I want is the background color to be black. And then I'm gonna give it a display of flex so that we can use the flex properties here. I'm gonna align items center so that the center aligned vertically. And then I want the text color to be white. Ours is not white yet. Yep, it's not white, so I'm just going to change that. Color to be white. And then that's our text, that's our image, and then let's see what else we have over here. we have some sort of border on top. I'm just going to check what color that border is. I'm going to use our color picker. So in the color picker, I'm just going to pick that color and copy. And add that border here. So it's actually border top. I'm just going to add the color. The width should be about 7 pixels solid. Okay, that looks decent enough. It's probably a bit bigger. Let's make it about 8 pixels. Okay, great. That looks like it. Now I'm gonna, so I've got display flex, align item center. I want to change the style of the text. Or let's start off by going over position. We can fix the text later. It's a small thing. Cool. So this is where I'm going to be applying the position property of CSS. It's a bit confusing to understand when taught theoretically, but makes more sense when we go over it, over the practical stuff. And now we're doing the practical stuff. So we're going to style the TV container first. So TV container, I'm going to make it flex. I'm gonna give the align items to be centered, so they all center align, and then also justify content center, because I want everything to be center aligned vertically and horizontally. Cool. That is good. At least it's in one line, but doesn't look anything like Netflix right now. Now I'm gonna create, I'm gonna style the TV image itself. So .tv container, it's inside TV container, so the TV image. And in TV image, I'm gonna give it a position of relative. Okay. Actually, before that, I should make the TV container relative, because I want the TV image relative to the TV container. So position should be relative. And this, I'm going to do the same thing for TV image. And then I'm going to change the position of the video to be relative, to be absolute, so that we can position it right on top of the image. So it's relative to the image, which is the parent position, which is relative, right? If we go back to our notes over here, it says that the element will be positioned in relation to the first ancestor that is not static and that is not in the natural flow. So our first parent element of the video is actually TV container, right? So I'm gonna make TV video relative to the TV container, and since TV container is center aligned, everything should center align properly. So the TV container is actually a display flex, align item center, justify content center, that's center aligned. So I'm just gonna go to .tv container, the video element, the class video actually, it's a class. And I will change the position to absolute. Cool. And that brings it right over the image. If you noticed, I just changed the position of the video, and that pushes the video on top of the TV image. I'm just gonna give the TV image a width of 100% to ensure that it fills the container width. That still doesn't help. Then now the next thing I want is to ensure that this TV video is actually behind the image. It's not in front of the image. And how we can solve that is using a concept called Z-index. So what Z index does is it basically specifies the stack of the order, specifies the stack order of that element. So the video is an element, TV image is an element. These are basically stacks, right? So you can imagine that video is being put over the TV image or TV image over the video, doesn't matter. What we can do is, how we can solve this is by giving it a Z index. And how Z index works is, Z index is basically a number, it's a CSS property. It goes on from minus 99999, it's a massive number, to infinity, right? So any element, if you specify an element with a greater stack order, so if you give an element of Z index 1, it will be displayed in front of the other element which has a Z index of -1. So imagine this as stacking, a stacking number. I want the largest to be on top, the smallest to be on the bottom. So I'm gonna give the video a Z index of -1 because I want the video to be behind, right? And then the TV image to be Z index of 1. Let's see if that works. That actually pushes it right behind the background as well, because this thing contains a background, right? It's a background of black color. So our video is currently sitting right behind the background. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove the Z index of -1. And I'm just gonna leave it as, I'm gonna leave this TV image Z index to be 1. So what happens over here is the background is staying where it is supposed to be. Then the video appears, and now since I've specified the Z index of 1 to TV image, it pushes TV image right in front of the video element. And that's how this thing appears. That looks great, but doesn't look exactly like Netflix. Netflix has that, and it resizes as well.
Hi, someone has a question. They asked if you can show the video div.
The video div, sure.
Just quickly.
Yeah. So just to begin with, how I got the video div is I right-clicked on the image on the video in Netflix, right-click inspect, and I come up to this div called Our Story Card Animation Container, and that contains an image, and then it contains another div that contains a video. So what I did was I right-clicked on the video element and went to copy and copy element and pasted it to our code. And I pasted it inside our video div. The video element basically contains some properties. So autoplay should be none, play, inline, muted, loop, everything's empty. Then we specify the source inside it, and the source is basically this link. This link comes from Netflix as well, and this type of that source is actually a video MP4. So all this comes from Netflix. I hope that makes sense. Cool. Now let's fix the font over here. So let's push the image to the right. Let's fix this a bit. So we're actually working on the info container. So I'm gonna go to the info container. The font is quite similar. Let's see if the font is similar to anything on top. So it's actually similar to H1 and H2. And we can do that here. What I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna go back up. I'm gonna copy H1 and H2. I'm gonna bring it down here. It's now inside TV container, not actually, yeah, info container. It's actually inside info container now. So I've literally just copy pasted the styling. Cool. And that looks better, but not exactly. That's space there, and that's because of the margin. So I'm just going to remove that margin. And that pushes it right to the left. How do we solve that? Let's see. Let's see what Netflix has done. I'm going to right click on Enjoy Your TV and see what the properties are on it. There's actually a padding all around it of 70 pixels and 45. 70 pixels top and bottom, 45 pixels left and right. I'm just going to copy that. I'm going to give that to our TV container and save. Let's see what happens here. It's actually supposed to be info container. Mistake. Okay, great. So there's that space there. So I'm just going to fix that space as well. H1. I wonder why we've got that. Let's actually analyze. Why do we have that space in Enjoy Your TV? It's actually an H1. It's an info container, H1. It's actually centered align. That's the issue. So I'm going to change that to be left aligned. That fixes the issue. Looks much better. Now I have to ensure that there's enough space in between. So I'm just going to give H1 some margin bottom of about 15 pixels. Maybe that's a bit too much, but let's see. I think that's less. You have to increase it a bit more. So I'm going to give it a margin bottom of about 20 pixels, but that still doesn't push our elements to the center. So what I'm going to do is to the TV container, to the info container actually. So the info container, let's change the position of this to be relative. And let's see if that fixes the issue. It doesn't fix the issue. Let's actually analyze what's actually happening here. So there's that. The info container actually has a padding left and right, and everything is aligned to the left. So what I can do is to the info container, I can just give it a justify content center. And that will center align exactly like Netflix. Netflix has it a bit bigger, has the image a bit smaller, actually. And this text is a bit bigger than usual. So we can fix that. Let's see what the font size is. It's about 1.625 REM and font weight of 400. So I'm gonna go to font size. I'm gonna change that to 1.625 REM. Let's see if that solves our issue. Yeah, it's much better. Now the image itself, the image, let's see what width these guys are using. So I'm just gonna highlight over the container and see what the width is. About 530 pixels maybe. Yeah, around that. Looks about 530 pixels, but it keeps resizing, if you notice. Let's see if it stays at 530. Yep, around that, 530 pixels. So what I'm gonna do is to the TV container, let me just give it a width, a fixed width of 530 pixels. And that breaks our video component. Still does not help. So I'm just gonna reduce that, 500, let's see what happens here. Such a mess. Nope, that doesn't help. So I'm just gonna remove width from here. And we've got our video behind, but it's not the size that we're looking for. So I'm just checking where the issue can be, and it also has more padding on top. There's some sort of, the image size is actually much bigger. So I think what we can do to solve this is reduce the image size. So this is the image, TV image width cannot be 100%, maybe about 80%. Still needs to be much smaller, about 50%. It's not helping, it's not changing the size actually. So what I'll do is, I'm gonna directly style the image. So it's inside TV image, and the image element, give it a width of about 80%. Okay, that resizes, perfect. That is great, that resizes it. Just gonna remove, we still have some issue here of that video. The video width has to be 100%. Perfect. So what I did was, the reason why the width on the TV image wasn't working is because it doesn't style the image directly. So what I did was I directly styled the image on the using the image element tag, the selector, image selector, reduced the width to 80%, and then gave the video a width of 100%. And that's how I got it to this size. But it still doesn't seem to be centered aligned. Let's see what the issue is. So the TV container is actually not centered aligned. The TV container. Everything is, I'm going to remove position relative, no. I think we can come back to that in a bit. If I can add some padding on the left and solve that issue. Let's see if that works. Padding left. 20 pixels. Does that center line it? Nope, does not. I mean, it's a minor issue. We can come back to that. I've got another important concept that I want to go over. Oops, our main page just broke. No, it actually did not. Okay, that was fine. Okay. So we've got that main, the banner wrap, and then we have this component. This component doesn't seem to be aligning center. Still need to figure out what the issue is. So TV container is centered align. The info container justify, everything centered align, but is still not centering. So I'm just going to remove info container position relative. Let's see, let's actually inspect and see what the issue could be. So we've got the info container, and then we have the TV container. The TV container has display flex, align item center, then justify content center doesn't seem to be working. If I remove position relative, that doesn't help. To the TV container, if I add some padding, so you can actually code in Google Chrome to test out all your concepts. So I'm just going to give a top and bottom 0 and left, actually padding left, just padding left. Let's see if that works. Of 20 pixels. And that breaks it. So let me change it to margin. Just push it a bit. Yeah, much better. So if I give it 100 pixel, it does push it further, about 200 pixels. That's actually creating that, breaking the sizing on the left as well. So that could be a concern. So if let me try adding a float right. Let's see if that works. Nope, does not. let's see the styling actually. Let's actually see the styling. So as you can see, positioning can be a bit tricky, and it's got me right now because I'm not able to center align it for some reason. Let's see what they're using, what Netflix is using. So they've got a position relative as well, overflow hidden. If you remove position relative, it breaks as well. So they're using a similar concept, but they somehow managed to get it centered on the line. And I'm not able to get this centered on the line for some reason. Perhaps it's because TV image is 100%. Yeah, TV image container could be 100%. Let me remove this width. Doesn't help. Okay, so what I'll do is, if we have time at the end, I'll come back to this and try to solve this error. So try to get this centered aligned. But as you can see, it's quite similar to what Netflix has built. I can replicate the same container and create the second container, which is download your shows to watch offline. Or I can even create this using the exact same method. So to make it a bit more cooler, so I'm just gonna copy this element and paste it again. So it looks quite similar to Netflix. And just switch the writings, the H1 tags. Let's see if that helps. Yeah, that's weird because on the second part, it does center a line. In our first part, does not center line. So I'll need to figure that out. I probably have some errors somewhere on my code. Could be something I'm not able to catch right now. Cool. Now the next thing is to ensure that I'm sorted with this first part as well, the banner wrap. Let's actually, now that we've covered the position property of CSS, now we can jump into giving that that opacity, that layer to the banner wrap. But before that, I just want to go over one concept, and this is a pseudo selector basically, and it's called so it's basically a double semicolon after selector. So it's actually called the after selector. And what this does is it basically selects an element in HTML. Once that HTML element loads, it adds the content in the after selector on top of the previous the original element. And I'll give you an example right now. It's actually a pseudo selector. So let's actually let's actually give this some opacity, some overlay on top of the image on the background wrap. So I'm going to go to the banner wrap. This is actually our original CSS code. So it's got background, it's got a height, it's got a position, background size. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it an after selector, okay? And how we do this is it's going to select the banner wrap and double semicolon and use the after selector. Now, anything that goes inside this after selector will come on top of this image. And let's actually give it a try. Let's see if it actually works out. I'm going to give it a content of empty. So content basically is a CSS property. It allows you to add content inside the CSS element. And then I'm going to give it a background color of, I'm going to use the RGBA right now, red 0. I want it to be a blackish overlay, so a grayish. So it's 0, 0, 0 is black, and alpha is basically the opacity. I'm going to give it about 0.7 and see if it works. Doesn't work. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm actually so it's created a content. It's like it's creating a div, right? but we haven't specified any height and width, so we can't really see it. So I'm going to give it a width and height of 100%. And height of 100%. We still can't see it. And then what I'm going to do is, the reason we can't see it is it's because it's behind all these elements. How do we bring it in front? We can do that using Z index. So I'm going to give this a Z index of -1, and the banner wrap, which is going to be in front, a Z index of 1. Still doesn't work because we don't know where exactly it's positioned. It can be anywhere. The general element flow is actually working where the banner wrap is being rendered afterwards. So what we have to do is change the position of banner wrap to be relative, and the position of banner wrap after pseudo selector to be absolute. And then now that you've changed it to absolute, now we have to ensure that the opacity starts from the top corner here. So which is basically 0, 0. So top should be 0 and left should be 0. Top 0, left 0. And there you go, voila. Your opacity appears on the screen. So we basically positioned the opacity, the pseudo selector, everything inside the after selector on top of banner wrap. We used position absolute so that the content, this background color, is relative to the banner wrap. I want it to start from the top left and end to the bottom right. So we used the position absolute. We gave it a top of 0, left of 0, so that I can position it right at the top, and top 0, left 0. Gave it of content 0. I don't want any content inside of it. And then gave it a height and width of 100% so that it fills the parent component. That's 100%. That's the height of ATVH. And specified a Z index of -1. So the reason I specified -1 is so that, so remember, a higher Z index will push the elements on top of another element, right? So if I remove these Z indexes, right, let's see what happens. The overlay appears, but your text does not appear. The text is inside the banner wrap, right? So if you give it a Z index of 1, it still won't work out because we're using an after pseudo selector. So you have to actually specify a Z index of -1 here to push the overlay behind the content of the banner wrap. And voila, the opacity is working. So guys, how is it looking? Much accurate, right? Like compare it to Netflix. If you notice, our font size should actually increase, and we can actually do that using media queries. I'll come back to that in a bit. I don't think we'll have enough time, but I can just show you one concept. I think I have some slides on it, on media queries. So a media query basically allows us to change the CSS style depending on the screen size. So it's basically a set of rules. So if the browser size goes above 1,200 pixels, use this property. If it goes below 1,200 pixels, use this property. You know, it's a set of rules. And how you can implement that is using this syntax. So you do @media, max width of 1,200 pixels and min width of 768 pixels. So if the browser is between these two sizes, the CSS will go inside the curly brackets. So let's actually test that. I'm just going to test that quickly. I'm actually not going to implement any media query here. but you can do that yourself afterwards. So what I'm gonna do is, let's see, H1, let's go with H1. So H1 is actually 50 pixels, right? So I'm gonna add a media query here of max width of 1200 pixels, min width of 768 pixels. I want the banner wrap, dot banner wrap. So you can add CSS inside this now. So dot banner wrap, H1 to have a font size of, make it something ridiculously big so we can notice it. And if you notice, the font size increases. Now I'm gonna increase it above 1200 pixels, and check that out. The font size changes. So when it comes between 1200 and 768 pixels, the font size changes to 150 pixels, and anything outside of that range will be the default, which is 50 pixels. And that's how you use the media query. So you can now implement the media query to match what Netflix is doing. So if you notice Netflix, this is a much bigger font, and as you reduce the screen size, there's a jump. So the font size reduces, then as you keep on reducing it, the styling changes again. You can keep on reducing it and notice if you see that font size change. So there's that jump as well. So you can create a new CSS, and this is where an additional CSS file can come helpful. So inside responsive.css, you can add that media query and add all the CSS code inside this for that particular screen size. And that's how a media query comes into help. Cool. I know we've got about 10 minutes, so I'm just going to quickly go over the footer. So this font is actually much bigger. That looks much like it. So the background is a bit different, but guys, how accurate is that? I know this thing has to be center aligned. That I need to figure it out. If you know where my error is, yeah, guys, please point it out. That will save me some time. But anyways, let's jump directly to the footer. So I'm not going to go over frequently asked questions because this part actually contains some JavaScript, and JavaScript, we're not covering JavaScript here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to directly go to the footer. So inside HTML, in our HTML file, I'm just going to give it a structure. And the structure is basically, there's a footer. Let's actually see the structure. There's a footer, then we have that row over there, then we have all these elements, then the country, the Netflix name. So we can quickly do that here. So I'm gonna create a footer container. And inside this footer container, there's that questions. So that's the contact us part. So I'm gonna create a contact us div. And then create these hyperlinks. So I'm just going to call it hyperlinks. And then create this Netflix Malawi. So that's the title. I'm just going to call it title. A footer title. Cool. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy all this inside. Let's actually create this first, the questions contact us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use an A tag. A tag allows us to create a link. href will be nothing for now. And the A tag basically has questions contact us. Nice. And then we have hyperlinks. These hyperlinks are basically columns. So you have the first column, second column, third column, fourth column. What I'm going to do is, for now, to just go over the concept, I'm just going to paste all this footer inside the hyperlink. And then I'm going to create a footer title, which is Netflix Malawi. So I'm just going to give it a p tag of Netflix Malawi. Cool. And let's see what we have on our Netflix landing page. So we've got something very messy. Now let's actually style it. So in our CSS, I'm actually going to style footer, so dot footer. And the footer has a display of flex, background color of black, color of white, and then it also has a border top. Let's just go back to the border. I think I've already done that somewhere. Border top, this was border top. Just gonna copy paste that here. And then if you notice, everything is now in a row. I want it to be in a column. So I'm gonna change the flex direction to be column. And that pushes the questions on top, the rest on the bottom, and the Netflix original right at the bottom. Then we also have some sort of padding left and right. So I'm just gonna see what the padding is of that footer. So let's actually inspect quickly. So it has a margin of 108 left and right, padding of 70, 70. So I don't know if I can copy from somewhere. It doesn't seem like that. So I'm just gonna do it myself manually. So it has a margin, left, top and bottom of 0, left and right off. Let me just confirm, 108 pixels, 108.108.5 pixels. Cool, let's see if that works. Yes, that pushes it right there. I'm actually going to change that to padding. Much better. There's an extra / there. Cool, and there's also some sort of padding top. Let's see what the padding top is. So 108 plus 45, that's about 153. So I'm just gonna combine the padding and the margin together. So that's about 103 and padding top of 70. So I'm just gonna change that to 153 and padding top of 70. That didn't work. It's actually 70 pixels. Perfect. That gets us right to the position that we want. I need to ensure that the A tag doesn't have some sort of styling on it. So I'm just going to do dot footer A tag, and the A tag has text. Let me make sure that text decoration is none. And color is actually some grayish color. I'm just going to quickly check if I can get that color from somewhere. That's weird. Let's see if I inspect this. Can I get the color? It's probably this color. Yeah. Just going to copy that color and use that. Let's see if that changes. Much better. And I'm going to give it a margin. So we have about 5 minutes. I just want to make sure that we can get that quickly done. So margin bottom of 15 pixels. That didn't work. Okay, we'll come back to that. Then the most important part that I want to work into right now is actually the UL, the unordered list. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to footer, style that, and I'm just going to say UL, and to make sure that it comes, that these small dots come out, these bullet points, I'm going to use a property called list style type. I will give it none. And that removes the bullet points. Cool. And then I'm just going to change the color of that. Let me actually change the color of the entire footer. not to be white, rather that color. Perfect. What I'll do next is separate this into columns quickly. So I'm just going to break that down. Div, I'm going to create, okay. So I'm going to create classes called column. So dot column. And inside this, how many do we have inside the Netflix landing page? Let's see, there are about 4 of them, 4, 4, 4, 3. So I'm going to do that same thing. I'm just going to create 4 of that inside here. I'm going to copy paste this 4 times, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. 4 of these here. Cut that. The next 4 now. And this will allow us to create columns. And last column. Perfect. Let's see if that worked. That did not work. That's because the hyperlinks is not a flex. So I'm going to do dot hyperlink. Give it a display of flex. Let's see if that changes. It's not actually updating anything, eh? Let's see what the error could be. Just going to remove this footer on the bottom. It's unnecessary. Cool, we've got that. Let me give the width of a column. So dot col, I'm going to give it a width of 100% divided by 4. So I'm going to use width calc. I'm going to use the calc function and say 100% divided by 4 because we have 4 columns. And weirdly, that's still not working. The width did work. So display flex, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to change. Let me try changing the flex direction maybe to the column. That still did not work. It still does not work. This is very weird. A very weird error. So I want this to be in 4 columns. So display flex should put everything inside 4 columns. Trying to figure out where the error could be. Just going to give it justify content start. That doesn't help. We are also running out of time. And I'm trying to break this into 4 columns right now. Should be fairly simple. Not sure why this is happening. Oh, I see what the error is. It's not recognizing UL. It's not recognizing the lists. The ULs the unordered list tag had to come inside the columns. That's where my error was. I'm just going to copy this, paste it everywhere quickly. I know we are over time now. Just want to make sure that we finish this quickly. I hope this solves the error. Yay, it does, it does, it does. So we've got our footer on the bottom. I'll maybe give some margin to our A tag, our contact us div. So I'm just going to do dot contact us. And give it a margin bottom of 15 px. That's much better. That's looking great, actually. It just needs to be centered aligned. So what I can do is to the footer itself, it's already display flex. I'm just going to give it justify content center. And that center aligns it perfectly. So we still have this issue to sort out. And we did not have enough time to fix that issue. It's probably a small minor issue somewhere in our code that can be fixed quickly. But guys, we have completed our Netflix landing page. What I'm going to do is I'm going to save this code quickly. I'm just gonna commit this so that you can access this code, guys. Please try. Okay, so please try fixing this error and let me know if you can fix it. I'm going to fix this after this live and push the code later. But if you can fix it, DM me on Instagram and tell me that you fixed this issue. But I'd love to see you fix this issue. You have enough knowledge to fix this issue right now. It shouldn't be a very big issue. It's probably something to do with the position somewhere. Not able to figure that out, but yeah. Please try fix this issue and let me know if you're able to do that. Otherwise, pull this code maybe a few hours later and I will probably comment out what I've done to fix this. Cool, guys. So I was actually pushing this code up so that you can access it. Netflix done. Oops. Awesome, guys. We are finally done with our Netflix clone. How accurate it is, it's probably not 100% because of this minor errors. And if we had more time, we'd make it more accurate and fix this. But guys, rate on the YouTube channel, how accurate is this out of 100%? We've added the opacity. The fonts type is quite similar. The footer needs to be worked on right now. And the other sections are quite similar to the section we just created. And that gets us to the end. Actually, the deploying part is left. We did deploy it previously, so I'm just going to deploy it one more time. So we actually using Netlify to deploy. So I'm just going to use my accounts quickly and show you how fast and how easy it is to actually deploy a website. You can use Git to deploy, but my Git is actually on, the current GitHub repository is on Akhil's repository, so I don't have access to it. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm just gonna drag and drop. So a new site, I actually want a new site. I'm just gonna scroll down. They've actually changed the way this thing is being used, the way Netflix is being used. So I don't have access to, yeah. So I clicked on new site and where is it gone? Nope. Yeah, cool. So the option appears. I don't, that was very weird. So I think I just refreshed and this option appeared. So this this option basically allows me to drag and drop the, it allows me to drag and drop the folder and actually deploy it. So I've dragged and dropped that folder to Netlify and the site is going to deploy anytime now. I'm going to change the text of this in the meantime, the URL. Change site name, I'm going to call it Netflix DSC UK landing page. Save. Let's see if that's working. So I'm just gonna open that link and things are crossed, guys. Yay. And that's our Netflix landing page clone, guys. How accurate is it? So are there any questions?
There doesn't seem to be any at the moment.
Okay, cool, perfect. So next steps is, I do know that we have another workshop that is coming up. So with time, so I do have some recommendations. So try working on the footer and other parts of the page. So the footer needs to be worked on a bit, and like try fixing that error. and also try adding these other parts. These can be some good practice parts that you can work on. And then maybe in future workshops, if we do go through JavaScript, we'll go over the way the frequently asked questions section was done. The reason why I say this is JavaScript is because it's dynamic. So when you click on it, it expands. So this is actually JavaScript that is being done over here. Cool, this is the end of the workshop. I know this is 6 minutes late, but we managed to finish our Netflix landing page. Awesome, guys. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to stick around for a bit and try to answer some questions. Yeah, guys, follow us on Instagram. My Instagram handle is I am Harjot Singh. Akhil's is Akhil Bodu, and the Zayo Instagram handle is zayo.io. Follow us. If you have any questions, DM us about anything, and we're happy to answer. Awesome. So I'm just gonna paste this link. So we try our best to ensure that our workshops align to what you want. So any feedback will be very helpful to us. So please let me know how I can improve in delivering these workshops to you. Was it too fast? Was it too slow? Yeah, any feedback will be very helpful. So I'm just gonna drop it in the chat, and you can take about another next 5 minutes to answer the feedback. Shouldn't take long, it's probably just 2 minutes. Cool. Gopika, do you mind just dropping the link on the YouTube chat?
Would someone else be able to do it? Because I'm watching it and like watching Zoom on 2 different laptops.
Oh, okay. Okay, what I'm gonna do, I'll try.
Otherwise, I'll get the like YouTube link on my other laptop. Let me see if I can.
So I'm just gonna open the YouTube link. So I actually closed YouTube because it was playing automatically.
It's okay, I have it on the same laptop now.
Awesome, guys. Thanks, guys.
I shall paste it into the YouTube chat.
Cool, got it. Got it.
Oh, you beat me to it.
So guys, I'm just gonna stick around for the next 5 minutes. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer. Otherwise, Jeremy, Gopika, how did you find the Netflix landing page? How accurate is it compared, according to you guys?
I think it looks really cool.
Yeah, it's incredibly accurate. I think it's really quite something to go from a lot of people doing the workshop with no knowledge at all of web development to actually making something that we see kind of almost every day is really quite cool.
Yeah, like it's so cool that you can clone a multi-million-dollar business in 3 hours. Like we just spent 3 hours and we created a clone of the entire UI. I mean, if we had more time, you can make it more accurate, you know?
Yeah, next job is just hosting all of the videos and getting that all on a website. No, it's honestly, it's really impressive. And I think it goes to show it's not that hard really. Once you know the basics of HTML and CSS, there is so much you can do. They are really quite powerful. And of course, you've got additional frameworks like adding Bootstrap into it and things like that people can kind of continue to do, which is quite exciting. But it's some really powerful tools to know.
Exactly, 100%. Gopika, what are your thoughts?
It was also really nice to see how much difference like the styling makes. Because you could see like from the the structure in the beginning, once you added styling, that's when it started to become the actual page that we're used to seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, because usually what HTML does, it creates a structure, it doesn't look exactly what like we want to, but the moment we start putting in like a few lines of CSS code, it looks more like what we actually want to build. So you can see how powerful CSS is. Like we didn't use any library, we just went raw CSS and like just used one layout module, flexbox, a position module, and that's pretty much. And the rest was just general styling, just like font and color. We just played around with all of those things, and yeah, we got Netflix.
Yay.
Cool. In the next workshop, we'll actually be building YouTube. So I'm very, very excited for that. It's going to be so much fun. We actually did a YouTube clone. So we had another workshop, well, I think last week, and we actually built the entire YouTube clone in 2 hours. So that was very crazy. So I'm excited to do it again next week. I believe it's on the 20, it's actually on the 1st, right? Or
Today.
2nd, on the Saturday, this Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay,
The
cool. Yeah, so I hope everyone tunes in on Saturday. Go pick are you sure of the time? I'm not sure of the time.
it's now 6:42.
Oh
Well,
no, the Saturday
oh,
workshop.
it's at 12 in the UK.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So I hope to see everyone on Saturday. We'll be cloning YouTube. It's gonna be so much fun. We'll probably cover some new concepts. YouTube does have a few new concepts that need to be covered, but otherwise, the basics have been taught. We'll just be reusing these basics again and again, and guys, we'll just be cloning all those websites out there on the internet. Cool. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for the feedback. And yeah, guys, see you soon.